Yes. Good morning. I'm Keith Hayes, executive producer of Mirador Television. Just popping up to say that today is a repeat of yesterday. It will start in approximately, about a minute and a half. I just wanted to let you know of the changes. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which will be live. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, which is an addition, will show a repeat of the day before. So today, you've got a repeat of yesterday, warts and all. Settle back and dip into the bits that you want. It was a very full day yesterday, a very good day, a very interesting day. I hope you'll stay with us. We're still suffering from a bit of technical rhubarb, but we're trying hard to cull that rhubarb and get on with the programming to the best of our ability. It is now 7:59, and we start our programming at 8 o'clock. So stand by, and you'll, I think you'll get a treat. Somebody said yesterday, our channel is full of characters. Not some mistakes, but full of characters. And it's 8 o'clock. So toodle pip from me, and here we go. Good morning. You caught me chomping on my morning biscuit. Never mind. Here we are. Keith Hayes, Mirador Television, broadcasting from the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, East Sussex. But broadcasting to the country and to the world. Not huge audiences anywhere, but substantial audiences and growing as our programs get meatier and we bring more and more experts and attractive people to the screen from all parts of the world. We normally, very rude of me, but still, I don't know how much sugar coffee while I'm at it. Actually, the coffee is essential. Most people know I got Parkinson's and it dries out the mouth. Some people will say, thank God for that. But I do need a remedy from time to time. And I suppose the time is going to come when they're going to carry me off the screen and somebody else will take my place. But for the moment, you just have to put up with me. I'm glad to be with you. It's sort of fun. People say, for God's sake, Keith, you're almost 84. Why do you get up at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning at your age? The fact is, I enjoy being with you. I like being with you. And the staff at this hotel are absolutely fantastic. When I get in, I'm well looked after. I'm given coffee, a little chat, make sure everything is there for me. A man could not be luckier. So why change until I have to? That day isn't too far away, I guess, until I have to. All right. Now we've got an interesting day for you. At 10 o'clock, we have our usual contributor, Dr. Mark Maybe, on occasion. and approximately 2011, the picture is back. John Henry. Thus continuing his broad history of humour in this country, based on Max Miller. 9 o'clock. Stuart Dolby makes a welcome return with a former colleague who worked with him in the Middle East to analyse what the hell is going on in Gaza. Now, there we start with a news headline. Because what's going on in Gaza is a tragedy. A human tragedy, and a tragedy, a global tragedy. So let's have today. The eye, 100 killed, sheltering at a hospital as Israel denies an airstrike. The eye reports, it says the Israeli military claimed the was a rocket that fell short, but dimmed it. It says this is also reports that Chancellor Jeremy lost. 100 feared dead. In a hospital strike. A photograph on the front page of holding her child who probably to devastation. Gaza officials claim Israeli airstrike on a hospital killed at least 500. But Israel insists the blast was caused by a misfired rocket from jihad militants. A photograph of the Al Ali hospital in Gaza, which is on fire, is carried on the front page of the Daily Mail. The newspaper says Israel and Gaza militants were blaming each other over the explosion, which it says may have cost 500 lives. Around 5,000 Palestinians were sheltering at the hospital, it adds. The Times, outrage at hospital attack. Strike kills up to 500 in Gaza. Israel denies responsibility and blames jihadis. Biden flies to Middle East. Wow. If it gets Biden out of the White House, you can tell just how serious things are. The Times leads with the explosion at the hospital in Gaza, reporting that Israel has denied responsibility. The paper says the claim that Israel bombed the hospital has prompted condemnation across the Middle East and protests in the West Bank. Elsewhere, on its front, the Times says the NHS is being urged to offer routine menopause Mo checks for women after they turn 40. The Daily Express. Hundreds die in huge blast at Gaza hospital. Officials have claimed up to 800 people died in the blast at the Al-Aki hospital in Gaza. The Daily Express says it carries an image of the hospital in flames and one of an injured woman and child. It has some sports news on the front page. It says England football team is on its way to Euro 2024. That is, after they beat Italy 3-1 last night. I think it was here at Wembley. The Financial Times is Gaza Health Ministry says hundreds killed in Israeli airstrike on hospital. The World Health Organization strongly condemns the attack on the hospital in Gaza. The newspaper also quotes the Palestinian Red Crescent as saying hundreds of people have died in the blast. Elsewhere on its front, it covers a meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Tuesday, and includes a photograph of the pair together. The Daily Mirror. This must end. 500 feared dead as the Gaza hospital is hit. The Mirror says the crisis in the Middle East must end as it shows a photograph of a child injured in a blast at the Gaza hospital. It also shares what it says is the last text message from a British mother confirmed to have died in Hamas attack on Israel. The Daily Telegraph. Biden visits Israel as hundreds die in the Gaza hospital. It also has a subheadline, MI5 warns of a UK terror threat from Iran. The Telegraph looks ahead to Joe Biden's visit to Israel. The United States president is expected to arrive on Wednesday and meet Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu, while UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is expected to travel to the country this week. It also carries a warning from the head of MI5 over concerns about Iranian-backed terror attacks in the UK in the wake of the Israeli-Gaza war. The Sun. Inside horror house where Brit girl 13 was slain. The Sun reveals a photograph of the inside of a house in the Israeli village of Bin, where it says a British teenager and her mother were killed by Hamas. It also carries a photograph of Yahel, aged 13, and her mother, Leanne. The Metro. Gaza hostage ordeal. Bring my baby home. A mother begging for the life of her daughter, a hostage from a music festival in Israel, makes the Metro front page. She's pictured holding up a photograph of a 21-year-old Mia, who was seen in bandages in a video put out by her captors. The Daily Star. Never ever goes along in the mainstream, but it hasn't today. Britain on the red alert over wonky walking terrorways. Invasion of the hairy clawed nippers, it says. Chinese crabs carrying up to 1 million eggs are blamed for scaring our cheery native crustaceans and eating them out of house and home. The Daily Star warns Britain is facing an invasion of furry clawed Chinese crabs, which it says are marching sideways across the country, eating everything in their path. It was bound to happen. Whichever side is responsible, it was bound to happen. And it's a tragedy. Absolute tragedy. What is it? You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. In this particular case, Hamas started the omelette. The Israelis are picking up the frying pan, and between them, they are costing huge toll in human life. A huge toll. But let's just finish off by looking at a little more in depth behind the headlines, front page. And what we should do is we should mention is in sports. We've had some rather good news, except from the cricketers. We had England's remarkable victory over Fiji in the Rugby World Cup. And last night in the Euro playoffs, England beat Italy 3-1, and according to reports, beat them relatively easily. The Daily Express says hundreds of Palestinians are feared to have been killed after a massive explosion tore through a hospital in the Gaza Strip. The Guardian says the building was packed with people injured by previous airstrikes and others seeking shelter from Israel's bombardment. According to the Times, the strike was caught on camera and sent blast waves through the hospital forecourt. It's among several papers to note that it's the deadliest such incident in the history of conflict between Israel and its neighbors. The front page of the Daily Mirror says the Middle East crisis is spiraling with the headline, "This must end." Who is to blame? Asks the Daily Mail, as it highlights both Israel and what the paper calls Gaza militants, offering competing explanations for the blast. The Daily Telegraph says President Biden is due to arrive at the war's most dangerous point, and reports that Rishi Sunak will also visit Israel on Thursday. The paper says the bombing will raise fears that Iran will enter the conflict, and cites reports saying the US is considering military strikes on Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, which is backed by Iran. The main editorial in the Times says Mr. Biden is returning the US to a mire in the Middle East, where successive US governments have become bogged down in fruitless attempts to promote peace. But the paper says the president may still be able to play the role of peacemaker and avoid a wider war. The Sun leads on pictures of a ransacked bedroom in a house in southern Israel, where it says a British woman and her daughter were killed by Hamas. The paper's reporter touring the scene describes a horror house littered with bullet casings, trashed furniture, and the remains of the family dog still in the living room. A grieving relative tells the Sun the images will tell the world what the terrorists did. The Financial Times reports that Sir Keir Starmer is facing a growing mutiny from Labour councillors who are demanding the party change its stance on the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The FT says there's pressure from council leaders, influential Muslim party members, and those on the left wing after Sir Keir gave, according to the paper, his unqualified support for Israel to defend itself in the wake of the mass massacres by Hamas. It reports on a meeting on Monday night at which councillors are said to have warned senior figures in Labour they have only a day or two to alter course before the situation becomes unmanageable. And the Daily Telegraph reports on a study suggesting that fast walkers live longer than dawdlers. Researchers at the University of Leicester, analysing health data from 400,000 British people, found that those who consider themselves brisk walkers are 25% less likely to die of cancer than their slower counterparts. The authors say the effect was most pronounced in older men, and walkers should pick up the price where possible. Well, that's the news headlines. And I suppose, really, it was inevitable that we were going to get something similar to this. Mouth washed out. War, conflict, always produces something that everybody holds up their hands and says, well, this wasn't meant to happen. But it did. It always happens. What do they expect? You let off a rocket and somebody will get hurt. And that's exactly what happened here. Whether, in fact, it's an Israeli rocket or an Israeli plane incursion, or whether it is Hamas letting loose a rocket which was rogue and turned its back on its intended target. Does it matter? But what upsets me, appalls me, is the way everybody rushes to take sides. Why can't we all say conflict is conflict and it should stop? Why can't we all say this should not happen again because we won't let it happen again, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Palestinian supporter, an Israeli supporter, an Iranian mullah, a United States president, a British MP. It doesn't matter who it is, but I don't hear one voice saying this is all wrong. This has to stop. Oh, you hear them temporarily. It's, oh, yeah, you shouldn't be firing rockets. But what happens even in the streets? When something like this happens, people take sides. Who are these people who take sides? Who are these people that say, oh, Israel's got every right? Who are these people that say Hamas can do what it likes to defend itself? Who are they? Well, I'll tell you who they are. They're people like you and me, who get hot under the collar when we think that something close to us or dear to us has been violated, we have a knee-jerk reaction. We don't think in terms of neutrality. Let's stop this savage way of living. This savage place that the world has become. This savage situation which should never arise in the first place. Oh no. Oh well, what we do, all of us, we say, well, you know, I mean, the Israelis is, goodness gracious me, you know, look at what happened. There's no wonder they're hitting back, and so they should. Or, well, Palestine has been put upon by Israel for God knows how long, and it's reasonable that it performs these acts of violence. It is not reasonable. It is not reasonable for anybody, either side. And I'm not a peacenik. I recognize that we need armed forces. I recognize that we are going to lock horns. But this sort of savagery, no, sir, no, ma'am. We should not condone it. But you'll say, we're not condoning it. No, you are condoning it. You're condoning it when you decide to take sides. You're condoning it when you talk about Israel, or you talk about Hamas, you talk about the conflict, you talk about whatever's going on. Stuart is here. He is coming along at 9 o'clock.
No, sorry. Just text from David. I can only make 9:30.
Okay. Unfortunately, that will cut you short by about 15 minutes, but still, good. Okay, so you're coming along at 9:30.
Well, I'm here, aren't I?
Do you want to come and? Well, come down and discuss the headlines with me then.
Well, okay. The thing about the Hamas, you know.
Yeah. Okay. No. Look, we're talking to them, Stuart. So come and sit down.
All right.
Coming from take your coat off, get your gin and tonic, and come and sit down. Oh dear, I do. No, I don't.
Well, you've got an in at this place.
But what I do like is, and I was saying to our colleague Harry in France yesterday, the reason I like going there is to have a brandy in my coffee, breakfast coffee in the morning. Come on, sit down.
No, I'll do two things. I've got a phone. David said that's fine, and secondly, I've got to give you the email.
Oh, right, okay. Right, we can do that, and if it can't get to 9:30, we've got time. Because it is now 8:27. So in an hour, Stuart will be along with his colleague, and they will discuss, from a very authoritative point of view, I may say, what's happening in the Middle East. In the meantime, I'm waxing lyrical by saying that such savagery should not be condoned by anybody. And it doesn't matter whose fault it is. The whole fault is that the whole bloody thing should not have transpired this way. But it is mankind that has created these situations, and it is mankind that needs to stand accused. J'accuse the people that I live with. Because I can't in any conversation find anybody who doesn't take a position on this. But it is not really a situation where positions should be taken. But try telling that to 98% of the population of the world. It's the same as the silly hatred that has crept into British politics. He's a Tory, so he's a toff. What daft, silly nonsense! And you hear it from on the social media, on the local social media. You'll see it from people in this town. He's a Tory, so he's a toff. And then you'll hear the other. He's Labour, so he's a commie. What absolute arrant nonsense! You stupid people! But you feed situations like this, and yet you'll go tut. This shouldn't happen. Well, it happens partly because of you. And it's about time that we started to open our minds and to discuss things and talk them through. Yeah, Stuart just said, oh, blimey. And you know, there are things which really stick in my craw. And the trouble is that those people who fuel this are the people that go around pretending that they are virtuous. Well, they're not. And they should look at themselves and look into themselves. You know, it's funny, but some police chiefs in the United States use what they say is zero tolerance. They will not stand for any petty little crime because they say that feeds the bigger scene, the bigger crime scene. And I think there is some merit in that. And the trouble is that every time you utter a hate word or you blame somebody else at this level, is that fuels discrimination at a wider and higher level. It's 8:30. It's the 18th of October, 2023. We can expect rain. But I think that, is it starting to rain?
Yeah.
Right, okay, well, let's just take a look at the forecast. Here we go. Right, today it's going to be reasonably warm. It's going to be 18 degrees, but gusty winds and heavy rain. Yeah, it's at 9 o'clock, which is half an hour away. Oh, excuse me. We can expect rain. It's only going to be 13 degrees, so still quite cool. It warms up as the morning goes on. And actually, we have a period of just cloud before it starts to rain again about 1 o'clock this afternoon. And then it rains solidly throughout the afternoon, throughout the evening, throughout the night. And actually, it doesn't stop raining, according to the forecast, until midnight. Tomorrow is the same. Friday the 20th, we can expect rain. Saturday the 21st, we can expect rain. Sunday the 22nd, we expect rain. And actually, Saturday is going to be very cool. It's going to be down to 12. Sunday 13. And then it starts to warm up a little again next week on Monday, where we're going to have some thunderstorms on Monday, but we're going to have some bright periods. And it'll reach 16 degrees. It's going to rain all next week as well, but with some sunny periods, and it'll reach about 17. That's the weather forecast. Now, I'm going to take 5 minutes. No, I'm going to take 3 minutes, and then I'm going to pull in Stuart, and we'll have a little chat about some of the headlines. We won't take away from his in-depth report, which he's going to do at 9:30. But he, I think he's gone off to get his secret gin and tonic. All right, we'll. There we go.
Hi, David. It's Stuart.
Well, here we are back again, Stuart Dolby and I'm Keith Hayes. We are just waiting now for our guest this morning, or at least Stuart's guest, and Stuart will be in conversation with Patrick Dolby, is a former journalist with the Jerusalem Post, and he'll be chatting about the situation in the Middle East, which it is impossible to ignore. And much as we sometimes skip what's happening on the international scene, it is impossible to do so in this particular case, because this is going to affect the world. So we'll just hang tough for a minute. Stuart, just give us a bit of background on you and Patrick. David, sorry? David.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. PD, yes. No, yes, PD Lennon. You're absolutely right. Make sure that I've got that right. Let's see.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, we've got it right. So we're just waiting for David to join us, and
David is very experienced. David is an Irishman, as you might remember, but he is married to a very, very wonderful Israeli lady, Vicky, and he worked for the Jerusalem Post for 11 years, I think,
right,
in Jerusalem, and then he took over the Financial Times Bureau in Tel Aviv. And when I used to go and see him, and we used to chat away, and he kept moaning to me about expenses, but we won't talk about that. And we both went and did the invasion of Lebanon together, where the general decided he was going to go right up to past Beirut and get in touch with the Maronite Christians and polish off all the Palestinians they could find in Lebanon. At that stage, there were quite a lot, and there was a whole load of them under Yasser Arafat, who was the leader of the Palestinians. Right. They were stuck in place in power, and I must say, finally, the editor of the Financial Times, Gordon Newton, used to call Yasser Arafat, "Yes, sir, Mr. Ratatat." We used to call him, "Yes, sir, Ratatat." And the thing is that they finally evacuated out to Gaza. I think it was Gaza. Yes, it was Gaza, and they stayed there ever since. But I think that Yasser has died since then, but he's not in charge anymore. So Gaza is certainly one of the places they went to. They evacuated to, but there was somewhere else as well, I think, because nobody would take them, because there wasn't a country Palestine, you know.
No, right.
Because there was a war. If you remember, there was that war against Jordan, because of trying to establish the identity of Palestine.
Yeah.
In fact, that started in 1948, didn't it?
Yes.
But in fact, right. If you're really going back, it's back to 2017 when the Sykes-Picot. Hello, there we go. Where are we? Is that mine? No, this is mine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where are we? Oh, no, something else now. Somebody's in Taylor, okay. Lived ends. Oh.
Good. Okay, well, we're now waiting for Stuart's guest this morning.
Did we get it right? You sure we got it? Yeah.
Yes, I copied it down from him, and it's gone, and it hasn't bounced back. So, I mean, if you like, you can call him, make sure that he's received the thing. Here we go. Here he is. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Great.
Right. Okay. Right. Here is as if by magic. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning. Good, sirs. You all look very cold.
It is, isn't it? after we had this Indian summer. I don't know whether we're allowed to say that anymore, but to hell with it. This Indian summer, it has gone rather chilly. Now, I'm going to sort of take me out of the equation, as it were. There you are. There's Stuart, and you can have a good conversation because the two of you are the experts.
Right. David, Keith here, who owns the Mirador Television, he has actually given you a very, very good profile so far. No, David, for the viewers, say David is a friend and colleague of mine from FT days, and he is an absolute person to talk about this Hamas and Israel because his wife is Israeli, and David was working for the Jerusalem Post for some years, and then he became bureau chief for the Financial Times in Tel Aviv, and we did actually do the invasion of Lebanon together.
I can't remember the invasion of Lebanon.
Sorry?
We didn't actually do the invasion of Lebanon. There were other people who did the invasion. We reported on it.
That's exactly, yeah. But David, who was the general that led that? What was he?
Ariel Sharon.
Arafat Sharon.
No, Sharon.
Siobhan, how do you spell it?
Sharon. Ariel Sharon.
Sharon, yes.
Sharon.
Yes. He was the one-eyed guy, was he not?
Yeah.
No, that was Diane.
Diane. Oh, right, now.
You see the ignorance that he's billowing. That's why an expert like you is good to have on.
Dave, as I regard it, wasn't it when we got up to Beirut, there was they're trying to get rid of the Palestinians because they didn't like them or whatever.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, where did they go? Did they go down to Gaza?
No, they went to Tunis.
Tunis, that's right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I was just telling our viewers, that the editor of the Financial Times used to call Yasser Arafat, yes, sir, Ratatat, Mr. Yes, sir, Ratatat. Anyway, so they went.
Could have an expert, eh?
No, quite. No, but let's then go back and say, what exactly is Hamas? Now, according to all of the papers now, you will correct us if we're wrong. Hamas it claims right, let me just get my thing here, if I may. Right. According to the public prints here, Hamas is a Islamic Sunni resistance movement, a military group, Sunni militant, in charge of Gaza and management of Gaza. Now, I think the word resistance means terrorism, doesn't it?
Does it?
Hamas is a Islamic resistance movement. Does that mean it's a terrorist movement?
Well, you have to start with your question of what's a guerrilla, what's a terrorist, what's a freedom fighter, everybody has their own. One man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. And some resistance movements use methods of terrorism, such as we saw just now, which is slaughtering people, wholesale, civilians and so on. So yes, it certainly engages in terrorist activity.
So, and also, what is their absolute aim? It says here, well, let's think. Right. The aim of the Charter of the Hamas calls for establishing an Islamic state and an Islamic Palestinian state in place of Israel. So establishing Islamic Palestinian state that will take place of Israel. Is that what their goal is, do you think?
That's what they say.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
So we've got as far as that we have got a terrorist group within the wider Palestinian family, if you see what I mean. Because not all Palestinians want to have been terrorists, do they? So this is a separate group within the Palestinian family, isn't it?
Yeah, there's several groups. I mean, you have the PLO or Fatah, as they're called, who basically they rule in the West Bank.
Yeah.
Hamas are their actually opponents. They've been fighting against each other, if not with weapons, at least they've been fighting against each other for control of the Palestinian world. And Hamas has been the most militant and ongoing, whereas the other one, Fatah, were willing to sit down and try and work out some peaceful solutions. If the word
but
peace,
Hamas has said publicly that they've attacked Israel because of the way that Israel treats women and what they've done against the Al-Aqsa mosque, where they've rubbished it, apparently. Does that seem a big reason for actually coming out of the Palestinian family and actually start killing off as many Israelis as they can find?
I don't think there's any justification for killing off as many Israeli civilians as they can find. They certainly there's been a lot of trouble over Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the third holiest shrine in the Islamic world and is in Jerusalem and is the source of much friction between Jewish religious extremists and Muslims who believe it's theirs, and they've ruled it for hundreds of years, or they've been in charge of it. So recently, there's been a lot of struggles and fighting over it. I don't know about the thing about the women. I didn't hear that one before, that they did it. I thought they did the attack because of the Aqsa and because of the ongoing killings in the West Bank.
Yeah. Well, let's switch over to Israel now itself. Now, we have to tell viewers that the whole thing about Israel and the Hamas goes back to the Holocaust, the Second World War, where a lot of Jews were killed and a lot of Jews weren't killed, and a lot of those found their way to America. And America, there were so many of them that they actually became a very interested voting power. They could actually dominate through their all the Jews in, say, Palestine. What am I talking about? Boston and New York and other places. There were so many of them that they could affect American voting power. For example, they could say, right, Biden must go in an election, right? Partly because of this Jewish cluster voter. Is that correct?
I have no idea what you just said. The American Jews have voting rights the same as American Christians and American Muslims, and and America is a country where people use their political power to get what they want, whether it's pork barrel politics, to have a road built through their town or an industry placed there. And the Jewish people are doing the same thing. They support Israel by and large, and they want the American government to support Israel by and large, which it has done and still does. But
why do they feel obliged to support Israel all the time?
Because they see it as a home, as a place where they can be safe. What question mark now? But having been through centuries of insecurity, and after the amazing, horrifying events of the Second World War and Hitler's Holocaust, they said that's the only way we can be safe is to have our own state. And American Jews, like Jews in most parts of the world, believe that this is probably the solution to an extent.
Yes.
So they say they obviously support the existence of a state of Israel. Not everybody supports everything that the Israeli governments do, particularly in the recent times with the rise of the right-wing and religious groups in the Israel government.
Right. Yeah, that's the whole point I was trying to was bumbling towards. Yeah, I mean, I think that yes, and Bill Clinton tried to actually. Other people had tried to actually solve this thingy problem, not managed it. I think Bill Clinton came quite close, didn't he?
Yeah, Bill Clinton did. Of course, the one who got the biggest, who got the closest involved, of course, was Jimmy Carter, the much maligned Jimmy Carter, who actually brokered a peace deal between Israel, Egypt, and Jordan way back when. And he was the most successful in getting them together and ending the fighting between Egypt and Jordan and Israel. And then Jimmy Carter came. Then Bill Clinton came along, and he tried to. He held peace talks and negotiations, but in the end, they weren't able to reach agreement.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. So but then, yeah. So now we've got some. Biden has actually been giving them some weapons and so forth, but now he's done some humanitarian things, hasn't he? He's done some humanitarian
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you think?
He's trying to get Israel to agree to open the border to let in humanitarian medical aid and to establish safe havens for people.
But there's only one exit now through Egypt, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But even that's not open because there's been bombing on the Israeli side of it, and the Egyptians say it's not safe.
No.
So they need some sort of. He might be able to get an agreement today. He's flying in. He flew in today to Israel, didn't he?
Yeah.
Just at the worst possible time, but not his plan. He didn't plan it to be the worst possible time.
Well, you know, do you think that Rishi Sunak is going to have much of an impact on all of this?
Who?
Our Prime Minister, you know, remember him?
Rishi. Well, I tell you, I'm sure he's a very good father. I'm not sure if he has much influence with anybody outside of his family and the bankers who sold all his money. But I don't think. I mean, I think that people like Rishi. Look, England decided to leave the European Union, and in doing this, it reduced its position as an international player of any significance. And today, it's if he wants to go to Israel and say, "I support you," they'll say thank you. But if he says, "But please don't bomb this hospital," he'd say, "No, you're a business mate. We'll do what we have to do." So no, I don't think that Rishi would have much influence. But and that man, what's the name of that very badly misnamed foreign secretary? Cleverly. Is he really Cleverly, Mr. Cleverly? Yes, I don't know. He's been running around making statements that nobody listens to. Yeah. No, I'm afraid I don't think England has any role to play except to say they didn't really mean to start all this when they gave up the mandate back in the 1940s.
Right.
I mean, its historical role was, of course, that Britain took over the mandate for the Palestinian area after the First World War, but then eventually in 1947-48 decided that there was too much fighting going on and they better bugger off, so they did.
But that was because of the Sykes-Picot situation, wasn't it?
Yeah, bring the French in. Always good to bring the French in.
Yeah. And what happened? They decided to separate the Middle East. So we got what? The French got Syria and Lebanon.
Yeah.
And we got Iraq and what's known as Transjordan, which is
Palestine and
Palestine is Jordan, isn't it? Part of Jordan is Palestine, isn't it? You
want to have an hour-long debate? We could discuss that, but historically it was known as Palestine, this area. Geographically, I mean, there wasn't a state or anything.
No, exactly. Yeah. So what do you now think is going to go develop from here? I mean, seems to be every day. It seems to get worse and worse and worse, and kids are being killed and so forth and so on by third parties. It's getting a bit gruesome, isn't it? Really.
I think it's the worst. I was just thinking today, when you and I were in the region and covering affairs there seemed to be more sort of parameters and borders to things like that. There was a war in Lebanon in 82, and we were involved not in starting it, but trying to keep alive. And so there was you knew it had parameters, and it didn't go any further. But today the concern is that the fighting in Gaza is going to drag in the Lebanese, Hezbollah, Iran, who knows what, and that's the real worry. That, this is going to turn into.
Well, what is Hezbollah? What is it? The Sunni Muslims, and what's the other Muslims?
Shiite.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And they Hezbollah comes from Iran, doesn't it?
Yeah.
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 Wish they keep their nose out of that for starters, didn't you?
Well,
they're not very nice people, are they?
Well, this is the thing. This is the big worry, that the whole thing is going to expand beyond the borders of Israel and Palestine.
The whole region, yeah.
The whole region. And this is what presumably Mr. Biden is hoping to achieve. But, he may be the paymaster, but is he actually do the Israelis listen to him, or do they just say yes, sir, and as soon as he leaves, go off and do their own thing? I think I remember back in 1982, it was Secretary of State Alexander Haig, himself a military man.
Yeah.
He visited Israel in 1982 when there was a threatened explosion between Israel and Lebanon. And as soon as he left, the Israelis took what he'd said as a green light, and then they went to Lebanon. I mean, Eric Sharon was very keen to go into Lebanon and clear out the Palestinians and the terrorists and Hezbollah and everything. But
back in those days, David, back in those days, do you remember during the invasion of Lebanon that we all came up there and there was to join up with the Maronite Christians, weren't we?
That's right.
And then, but I don't think Sharon wanted to go right up to Beirut. So the Maronite Christians in Beirut, they went into Sabra and Shabla. What was it? Sabra and Shatila. And they massacred what? The Palestinians.
In the refugee camp, yeah.
Yeah, the refugee camps for the Palestinians, yeah. Sabra and Shatila. And that was the Maronite Christians that did that, wasn't it?
It was, indeed. Yeah.
Because they were supposed to join up with the Israelis, weren't they?
They were working with them, yeah.
Yeah, but Sharon didn't quite get up to Beirut. He came up to Matala, Sidon, and then decided he's had enough. The Maronite Christians could do it, because they're very, very right wing, aren't they?
The thing is that you'd want to have your wits about you to keep up with all the changing permutations and whatnot of who's with whom and who's doing this today and tomorrow. But at the moment, as I said, I think that the biggest danger is that this could spread. There are certain parties who'd love to get a war going with Iran. There's certain parties who would not like to see a war going with Iran. And I mean, this is one of the things that Biden is saying now, this has got to be contained. Because the Israeli anger and beyond anger at the attack 2 weeks ago that killed all these people on the border in the border villages. I mean, they have to do something. They have to get some sort of revenge. They have to get something. They just don't want this to keep going on. But on the other hand, the Americans are worried that if this spreads, then it's going to be, who knows where it will end. I mean, by the way, just as a matter of interest, all those Israeli villages up on the northern Lebanese border have now been evacuated by Israel, because they're obviously anticipating some sort of a blow up there.
Oh, just because I'm writing my memoirs, what is that fault that you had to get around going up? Was it Fort Belvedere? Belvedere.
Was it not Beaufort?
Beaufort, that's it, yeah.
Misnamed, Beaufort, beautiful fort. A lot of people were killed at the beautiful fort.
How do you spell it? B-E-A-U.
Yeah, F-O-R-T. It's a French word, obviously, because the French had all their influence there. So, or maybe from the days of the Crusades, I suspect. Yeah, you see, it goes back a long way. All this fighting. Remember the Crusades?
May I ask a question? May I ask a question, Stuart?
Yeah.
David, you just made the comment about trying to contain this situation, and people keep on saying the wider implications, but I haven't seen anybody yet who has actually outlined what the wider implications may be. Could you paint a scenario for us?
Well, as you know, there's a division between the two Muslim sects, the Shiites and the Sunnis, and on one side you've got the Saudis, on the other side you've got the Iranians, and they are fighting against each other for control of the region. And on one side you have the Americans backing the Saudis, such lovely people, and on the other side we don't know who's backing the Iranians. I suppose. Maybe the Russians to a limited extent, and the worry is that the other powers will be drawn in, that the conflict will begin to spread, and then you'll get the Saudis piling in, and the Iranians piling in, and then the Americans piling in, and then the Russians piling in, and boom. And the biggest problem, of course, is all these people have very dangerous weapons, some of which are actually called nuclear weapons. And, where do you go with that? So the danger, the worry is about it not being contained, and it's a serious worry. And I mean, Joe Biden has got on a plane yesterday to fly to an area which is in flames at the moment. Pretty unusual for an American president to sort of fly into a danger zone like that. Yeah. And before he got off before his plane even took off, the Arabs canceled their meetings with him because they said that this hospital bombing, there's no point in having a meeting unless he can stop the war first.
Well,
so
you're saying that it could become a global conflict.
Well, I mean, a global in the same sense as we talked about, the World War, where World War I is as a world war, which in fact was just a bunch of European, aristocrats fighting each other, but. A world war would imply more, but I mean, certainly a Middle Eastern regional war, yeah. I mean, I don't think the Chinese are going to get involved. I don't think the Indians are going to get involved. I don't think the South Americans or the Africans are going to get involved. So, it'll be the cockpit, the Middle Eastern cockpit again. Yeah. But people outside on the periphery could get sucked in, and then quien sabe, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Because I think that this expansion, but few commentators, in some of the major publications and on the BBC, etc., have quite explained it. But I think that you were very succinct, and I understand now much more what the implications are. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. I hope that none of this comes to pass.
Yeah, but this will be on YouTube. You can get the video, can't you? Can't David get the video?
Oh, yes. This is going out on YouTube as we speak, and it will stay there. Yeah.
Yeah, David.
Yes.
You hear that?
I did. It's terrifying. Yes.
If I may, one more question, because I posed this to Stuart earlier. I mean, it is said that a cockroach can't get across that border between Gaza and Israel, and yet a rather well-organized Hamas assault took place against one of the most sophisticated intelligence services, and for that matter, armed forces in the world. How did that happen?
I'll tell you something. That's a question they're asking themselves in Tel Aviv and in the military command. How did it happen? How was it possible? What on earth were they doing? It would appear that the Hamas people who came across were flabbergasted to find that there was nobody there, and they just sort of kept going. And then they started slaughtering people left, right, and center. But I think they were astonished that there was no resistance. How did it happen? It happened because of hubris. And you can look that up in your dictionaries, guys. Hubris. They just, the Israelis became overly confident about their...
Nobody would touch it. Yeah.
And they should have referred back to the one-eyed General Moshe Dayan's eulogy back in 1956 when one of the guards in one of those kibbutzim that was attacked now, he gave an obituary in which he said, "These people are 8 miles away from us. They're angry, and we should be on guard all the time." And of course, they just became so confident that they let their guard down, and there will be, serious questions asked, and I suspect a lot of people will end up losing their jobs.
Well, David, that is very, very kind of you to do this, and hope you had a nice time as well.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you very much.
do appreciate it. We are small, but we punch well above our weight.
Yeah.
And having people like you explain to our viewership, who are fairly sophisticated, exactly what the situation is from an expert is extremely useful to us. So I hope you don't mind if we chat. If this thing goes on and on and on, which is likely to, perhaps we could tap you again from time to time and get your viewpoint.
Well, I'm very happy to chat with you.
We've made you
Stuart.
We've made you a star of film, TV, and radio.
I'm waiting for a star in the sky to be named after me. Yes, but anyway, nice to talk to you again, Stuart, and see you looking just like a fisherman.
This is one of his famous hats.
But listen, let's just hope that somebody can defuse this or contain this situation, because it is very serious.
Yes.
For all sides, and the number of deaths.
Yes, David.
Si, senor.
Me and Leslie are going to be coming up to London a lot more at the Frontline Club, so perhaps we could meet up.
It's been broadcast on YouTube that you're coming up to London.
Sorry?
I said, is it being broadcast on YouTube that you are coming up to London?
The masses, crowds at the train watching him get off.
There'll be hordes out in the streets to wave to the YouTube, waving Mirador flags.
And what's happened to those houses in Dublin that you were trying to sort out?
All is well.
All is well.
All is well. It was all settled over a pint of Guinness. And so it could be.
David, thank you for joining us. Very, very kind of you. And as I say, perhaps if you don't mind us tapping you once in a while, just particularly if this situation does get more complicated. I think it is vitally important that the average citizen understands the issues and the background as to what might happen and why it's happening and what has happened in the past that spurs this on.
Yeah, well, David, get my best to Vicky when you go back.
I will.
And I hope to see you soon.
Inshallah. Yes, indeed.
Inshallah. You know what that means, don't
it? Goodbye?
No, inshallah means if
God willing.
Right.
God willing.
Yes.
Or an old friend of an Irish friend of mine would say, if the Lord spares us.
David, thank you very much.
All the best, God. Take care.
Bye.
Right, Stuart, thank you for getting David on, because it's given us a good view of what's going on.
He was very clear, wasn't he? Yeah.
Indeed. We'll just check to make sure that that we right. That's just a note from our next guest that he doesn't mind being kept waiting because of the importance of this. So we'll cut off now. We'll say goodbye, and we'll go to the next next series. So thanks, Stuart. That's absolutely great.
Yeah.
What I need to do now is just sign us out, and we'll get on with the next phase, as it were. But that's terrific, and I'm glad that you managed to arrange that. It is very topical, but also very complex, and you've got David Lennon on to explain some of it, and the two of you being experts is very helpful. Okay, toodle pip, everybody. We'll see you in 5 minutes.
I've had a lot of my mates on here, haven't I?
Sorry?
I've had a lot of my FT mates.
Yes, well, it's long may it happen.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back. A very busy morning this morning, and now we're just waiting for Dr. Mark Maybe, Professor Maybe, to. Well, welcome back. A very busy morning this morning, and now we're just waiting for Dr. Mark Maybe, Professor Maybe, to join us so that we can have a chat about education, where it's going, how it's changing, and some of the implications for Lewis. And so he's got the link. I'm sure he'll be with us in a minute or two. We are, just so you know, changing the format a little so that we can actually punch heavier on several days. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we are now live, and a very strong lineup we've got on each of those 3 days. And then we replay. We play Monday on a Tuesday. We play Wednesday on a Thursday, and Friday on a Saturday. So guess what? As if by magic, here he is, Dr. Mark Maybe.
Keith.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Keith? A bit blowy up here today, a bit on the windy side.
It's cold down here.
Cold.
Cold. Yes.
Anyway,
sorry that we kept you waiting, but we had an interesting former Jerusalem Post journalist on to talk about what was happening in the Middle East. I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about how sort of youngsters sometimes are a bit out of touch with academia. And I was telling him how you show a pen and a fob watch and a lovely clock behind you and so on to show what these things were like, because they have no inkling, never experienced them.
No, absolutely. It is a matter. I think I told you last week about the young lad that I talked to that had never seen a fountain pen. Well, I asked all the kids. There were 30 in the class, and none of them, not one single kid, had seen a fountain pen. I know it's old school, but it's not. So I always show it, Keith. My normal, good old fountain pen. It's
absolutely, yeah.
That's about, isn't it, Keith?
Yeah. Strangely enough, I had on 2 or 3 months ago now, but he lives in Lewis, the former MD of Parker Pen.
Oh, right. Excellent. Wow. Yeah. Parker Pens, they were the sort of Rolls Royce, weren't they?
Weren't they? Indeed. And they were based in New Haven.
Yes, I've got one of these sort of posh Mont Blanc. My treat to myself as I sort of went into semi-retirement was to buy myself one of these rather nice, stylish Mont Blanc pens. So that was my my present to myself. But people look at me gone out. What are you using that for? Now, Keith, you can even that someone sent me a document to sign, and they asked me to sign it on the screen.
Yes, I know.
So I said to them, where's the pen?
It doesn't look a bit like anybody's signature.
No, it doesn't look anything like mine, because you do it with your fingernail, don't you? So you can hardly do a proper signature. But
yes.
There you go.
I can actually remember, I was quite a young boy, but I can remember when biros or ballpoint pens first became popular, and it was said that this would ruin handwriting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting because my handwriting is not very good. And one of the reasons that I used to use a fountain pen, because you can't write quickly with it. You've got to sort of write fairly slowly. Yeah, and now write with a biro, you can sort of scribble, but with a fountain pen, you can't scribble. You've got to write. You have to write slow sort of way, which I think educationally, I think that I know it's proper old school, but it wouldn't do a lot of kids any harm to do that. And I wonder whether in 20 years' time, Keith, whether kids will even be able to write.
I wonder, Mark. I mean, you know how my mind works is in weird and wonderful ways. But I wonder with your new university whether it would be worthwhile just setting up and replicating an old classroom and let them all just have, even if they had an hour in it, to see what things are like. I think it would be rather interesting, wouldn't it? Perhaps we could find a sponsor for that.
I think it'd be really good. I'd also thought that, no doubt when I was at school, Keith, you did technical drawing. Now it's all on computer, but actually it wouldn't do any harm to bring back those big drawing boards and get people to actually use their skills and draw rather than using all this CAD CAM stuff, which is fantastic. But if they actually did it and draw first and then put it onto CAD CAM. I know certainly I had an interesting experience. I visited last week an organisation called the British Academy for Jewellery, and that's based in the jewellery quarter of Birmingham, and they had proper old school craft workshops with little benches with copper and brass and gold and silver. And they were actually doing proper jewelry. But when I went to another class, they were in their early 20s. They were actually doing designs, but by hand. And I said to the guy, this is fantastic to see young people designing things on paper rather than getting computers to do it for them. And he was saying, in things like jewelry, you can get computers to do it, but actually transposing a drawing into some metal is actually much easier to do than you can't really transpose a computer into brass or copper. But yeah, I think it's really important.
Perhaps what I'll do is put out an appeal for a sponsor so that we can build a little old style classroom, perhaps with inkwells as well as the old desk. And we could make that a focal point of this program.
I think it would be, because it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's called the School of Innovation, but actually, if you think about things as you rightly said, moving from this thing here, then through to, I've actually got like another one. I've got a one that's a ball pen, and it used to turn the bottom, and the pen would come out, and that was sort of in its time, Keith. That was innovation, wasn't it?
Indeed, it was.
So you turned it like that, and the nib came out, and you turned it, and that was innovation.
And I always think that when we look at innovation now, that it should be put in the context of what was in the past. You may be interested to know is a friend of mine. In fact, he was my old boss at Reuters. Is trying to raise. It's quite a lot of money, but apparently scientists are as concerned about sound pollution as air pollution. And in fact, they say that sound pollution is more dangerous than air pollution. And he wants to build a theme park, so that the funds can support their research. And you go into a chamber as it would have been in the time of the dinosaurs. And then you move until you come out in the last chamber is what it would be like walking out of, say, the underground station at Piccadilly Circus with all the cacophony of noise.
Amazing.
And I think that this business of contrast is so important. It's so important.
I think so. Well, it's interesting. I've been a member of my dad was in the military, and I belong to a club called the Victory Services Club, based in Marble.
You've taken me there.
I've been there. You've been there, Keith. And the really lovely thing about the Victory Services Club is that they don't allow telephones, mobile phones, in the bar area. And I was there last week, and there was a guy on his mobile phone. I'm a really polite sort of person. I don't normally go up to him, but I actually went up to him and said, please don't, if you want to use your phone outside, because there's no music, there's no mobile phones, and it's beautiful. And sometimes they're on my own, and you can just have a drink, and there's not people jabbering on a mobile phone or music blaring. I sound real old fart now, don't I? But music blaring.
On the contrary, more and more people are talking this way. They begin to realise that after all the hype about where we're going with computers and so on and so forth, is that if we actually forget things along the way, it draws people back. They're using computers is at half speed, if you like, because they don't appreciate some of the things that, for instance, no mobile phones. In your game, or let me say our game, is there is nothing worse than holding a seminar or a lecture or whatever, and everybody's going like this under the desk. Actually listening is becoming a lost art. So anything to make sure that people listen, and for that matter, talk, is a positive in my view.
I think I maybe said this to you last week, Keith. I went to an Italian restaurant a week or so ago, and there were a young couple sitting sort of opposite me, and they're in their early 20s, and I was in there for nearly 2 hours, and they didn't talk to each other once.
Yeah.
They were on their mobile phones all the time. And I said to the person I was with, do you think they're saying, do you want a coffee? Shall we have dessert? Because they didn't speak. And I was sort of enthralled that you could go to a restaurant and not talk. And that's the great thing about the VC club.
Conversation, yes. Food is secondary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you prove it with this great television program you do, Keith. It's all about people and communication skills. And I remember, when you were teaching at London College, you talking about the importance of sort of enhancing your communication skills, both verbally but also written. And I think if I'm not sure that when you're writing things, it's sort of up here, isn't it? Really.
Yes,
but now
right.
you just get this thing out, don't you, and type in what you want. But actually, the imagination. And I did think I didn't, but I felt like saying to these young couple, put your bloody phones away, have a chat, because you'll get much more from bloody chatting than on your phones. But it's really, and I think that's one of the things that I want to bring into the School of Innovation. Is it's not all about high tech. It's about seeing how innovation has developed, and it's really important. I often show I collect pocket watches, and I show people the inside of these pocket watches, and I've got one on now, Keith, and they're just amazing inside. I don't know whether I've seen it on there, but the sort of that's technology.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a beauty too. That is just beautiful. Where did you get that?
I had that from my grandfather. It's about 120 years old, and it keeps perfect time, Keith. And you do something called winding it up.
Yes,
you wind the thing up, and
I think it's called the Hunter, is it not? Is it called the Hunter? Yes.
Yes, it is. Yeah. They have lots of different, but I think that everyone's so used to technology now, and when people see me and they say, "Oh, that's very smart," and I say, "I don't have a watch," and they say, "What do you use?" And I say, "Well, I use this thing. It does as good, and it keeps time to the minute, and I just wind it every day."
Yeah.
But it's an interesting concept that particularly young people don't even get shown in schools now. So it's not.
No. Well, all the more reason for us to try to replicate just a small classroom.
Yeah.
Then you can you could deliver little lessons in this classroom, Mark, and you can put on your gown.
Yes, absolutely. My gown, my mortarboard, and
absolutely. I mean, all my masters at school wore gowns. Yeah. In fact, I wore a gown myself for a little while. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. It's very, very smart. But it's a bit. I thought back to sort of days when I was at school, and things that were no value to me whatsoever were things like learning algebra or Pythagoras theorem and all this sort of thing. I never used that. The only thing in maths I really use is percentages, etc. But the other thing that I noticed, I told you about this little school I'm governor of, that we were taught sewing, and we were boys and girls sewing, and domestic science it was called, cooking, and they don't do any of that now.
No.
And I think it's much more value knowing how to. Oh, you're bleeping. It's much more important knowing how to cook something than Pythagoras theorem. you know, I think, but
2 pi r.
yeah, 2 pi r. Yeah. What's that all about? What use is that? You know,
Exactly.
Meat and potatoes. That meat and potato pie times 2 is good.
Yeah. Well, actually, strangely enough, a couple of years or so ago, I approached a chef who had, actually, he approached us, had written a book, and he wanted to see if we could televise it, and we looked very seriously at it. But he did simple things like scrambled eggs and sort of baked potatoes. And he said his biggest demand for this book was from young girls who had just got married and they'd never been taught to cook.
No,
A mother-in-law was coming who came from an age to cook, and they needed to be able to cook something. You know, and so that they actually went to this chef to find out how to cook simple meals.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And a lot of it's just basic stuff, isn't it? You know, but because you know, they that's not part of the national curriculum now, so they don't do. You know, it's, you know, as is in, you know, when I didn't really, to be honest with you, I did pick quite a bit of it up, but until I went off to university, then you had to cook, because if you didn't cook, you couldn't eat, you didn't live. So it's just, I think, bringing back some of these older, more traditional subject areas.
Yes.
And not going back in time, but actually, I think they could take us further forward.
Yes. It reminds me of that scene with Sidney Poitier, whom I was a great fan of his acting. But in To Sir with Love, you know, he teaches his students, you know, when you haven't got much money and you need to eat, this is what you do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes, absolutely. It's I think.
No, go on.
No, I think all that's lost, and I think we should bring that back again. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, as I sent you a little text in the week, and I have to send to you via email the way to get in touch with our councillor here. She is both district council. A district covers about 100,000 people, and town council, which covers 17,000 people. Janet Barr, Councillor Janet Barr, she is the leader in education here. She is a fascinating lady, because she came to Britain from Ghana when she was about 11 or 12. And as she says, you know, where else in the world could a lady from Ghana become mayor of a relatively important town like Lewis? She did.
Brilliant.
She's a delightful lady. She's a real go-getter. You and she will get along famously together. But she is very interested in chatting to you about, and let's explain to those people who are new to this, because we discussed this last week. You are part of a team leading the development of a university without lecture halls. Explain that.
Okay, so we came up with the concept that wouldn't it be good to have something that is different. You know, there haven't been many new universities since the 1960s. Warwick University was one of the last universities to be a university. There have been a couple of new universities. Dyson, he set up a university in London, but we thought that it would be really good to set up something different. So I've been working with two young guys. They've been funded via a venture capitalist to set up a new type of university, but something radical, something that doesn't involve people sitting in lecture theatres with 250 seats, but actually very much work-based, very much project-based, having speakers coming in, but not actually talking to massive numbers, but actually running little workshops, running very practical sessions, and for the students that are on the programme, that they'll go out and spend a fair period of time out in industry themselves, developing skills, but also developing employability skills, and the sort of thing we've just talked about, communication skills. Often just sitting in a lecture theatre it's great. You can absorb lots of information, but there are different ways of doing that now. So we wanted to set something up that was very different. The two young guys that are working on the project asked me to join them as an old man to help them with that, which I've been doing for about 6 months now. They've raised nearly £1 million, and that means that we can sort of start to move forward with putting together the application for a university. And it will be very different. I think I explained to you before, that we're thinking of setting up a hub in Manchester,
Yep.
but then having spokes in different parts of the country.
Yep.
One thing I'd really love to do is to have a spoke down in Lewes,
Yes.
where
I'm very anxious, and I'm pushing hard for the first spoke to be Lewes.
Right.
I think it's such an important development, and we've got a lot to offer here, I think. So I hope that you and Janet can actually get something going between you. I rather think, and I don't know whether you found it already, that academia as such will probably be a bit resistant to this. But I think that it's so important to get back to what was a good apprenticeship scheme in the past.
And I think it's bridging the gap. It's bridging that sort of traditional apprenticeship. But probably going back 50 years, where people used to study. The thing we're thinking is that we need to fit in with people's working life. So we'd do things, the old-fashioned evening classes, and Saturdays and Sundays. So they might do 2 evenings a week, which they might even do online. They would come in, work in little groups, and then a Saturday or Sunday when they would come in. And I think it's it's not exactly revolutionary, but it's sort of it's sort of going back to the sort of things we've just been talking about, Keith. Perhaps a bit more traditional, but not chalk and talk, but people actually doing things and having live projects they work on, and then they report back. They go back out into industry or into journalism or whatever, and they come back and then they teach their fellow students. They go in and say, this week I work with Keith Hayes on Mirador TV.
And you're going to get one of these young chaps, or both of them on, aren't you?
Yes, I'm going to. They're always so busy. Typical young people, also busy on different things. But I will get a young guy called Will Hill, who's the guy who's heading up, perhaps to come on next week, Keith, if it's all right with you.
Excellent.
And he can explain in a bit more detail what they're planning.
Is behind me, just coming, is our next correspondent. Is a gentleman called John Henty. And John, actually, in a different sort of way, follows what you and I are talking about, because John is as long in the tooth as I am, and actually started Radio Brighton. But he is a great proponent of Max Miller, comedian.
Fantastic.
And he explains how what Max Miller did 50 years ago has influenced today's comedians and helped develop and so on, and put it into context.
Amazing.
What he does and says is very interesting, but it also sort of fits in with the theme that you and I have talked about. You can't do anything unless you've got things in context, and it's a good theme. And I mean, there we are. Perhaps this new university can have something for comedians.
Yeah, well, perhaps we can invite John in as an honorary professor to come and talk to the students about things.
I'm sure he would do it. Actually, he is great at going around this part of the country anyway, and lecturing about all sorts of things. The other gentleman that he was very helped promote was the author of The Snowman, Raymond Briggs.
Oh, right, yeah.
Wow. So he's a fascinating character, John, and he's all over the place. So we title his program "Plenty of Henty."
I've heard him a couple of times when I've tuned in, and a really interesting guy. And I think, Keith, you're very modest, but one of your great skills is you manage to bring so many characters in, and I think that's one of the great things I like about Mirador TV, that you filled it with your barristers and people like Suzanne and others that come in, and they're proper characters. And
there aren't any ordinary people, are there?
No, that's what life's about, having a laugh and fun. So it's great. So,
Mark, I will send Janet's details to you,
Great.
and I see that you're now talking to Suzanne.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully get something together for next week.
Oh, excellent.
Yes. So
things are motoring on, but you talk about characters, and I mean, you're one of the most unusual educators that I've ever come across. So I'm glad that we've got you here. And I must say, I always enjoyed the time that I worked with you.
Yeah, me too, Keith. It was great times. I often, like you you look back on times, and I think, actually those times in Notting Hill Gate when you and I went for a glass of wine down the local pub and chewed things over. We got more done doing that than we did in lots of ways. Really, it was great, and it was a start of a lifelong friendship that we now have, which is wonderful.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Apart from which, you deliver delicious eggs.
Yes. I hope to see you very soon, so I can bring you some eggs over.
Yes, well, I think we must now work seriously on that meeting in London.
Yeah, that'd be lovely, Keith. Yeah, great.
All right. But if we don't talk to you in between time, we'll see you next week.
Great. Yes. Good wishes to you and all your viewers.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, Keith. Take it easy.
All right. Dr. Mark Maybe, a character in education, and it will bring all sorts of exciting things to Mirador, and perhaps exciting things to Lewis, particularly if he can persuade our powers that be to join him in his university project. It's Mr. Henty. Would you like to come and join me?
So this is it, is it?
It is.
Well,
this is where it happens.
Oh, lovely to see. It must be Wednesday.
Yes, it is.
Oh, dear.
And we've just been talking. You
I
probably
heard you
in the background.
I heard it.
Talking about you, and there you see the nice thing is that you've got a fan there that well, you've got lots of fans, but a fan of one of our correspondents in Stoke-on-Trent.
Good grief, the potteries.
Absolutely.
I could have told him about Mabel Lucy Atwell, whose pottery was very much up there.
Well, he just said that he would like to get you as a guest lecturer on his project. So you'll have lots of opportunity to include Lucy.
Lucy. Yes. I love Lucy.
Yeah. And Desi Arnaz.
I know
Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz.
I love those people. And then later on, of course, there was the Joan Rivers, I think, the amazing Joan Rivers. Outrageous lady. But again, all part of the same syndrome, really.
Yeah.
In other words, individuals, characters, and getting across comedy, but in a really strong, forceful way, which is what it's all about, as we've discussed on many occasions.
Absolutely.
So good to see you, Keith.
And good to see you. Can I just say before we start with, because you've always got fascinating stuff, I don't want to interrupt this, that I have now broached to a counsellor that the secret garden is scruffy, that nobody seems to be doing anything about it, that we've actually got a plan in place, and she has promised to get us together with the council to see whether they'll allow us to
I hope so. We both hope so, and it really wouldn't take an awful lot to be done, and it wouldn't cost a lot of money either.
And we've already got a gardener in place.
Absolutely. There are others, I'm sure, who would leap at the chance, because it was a delight, and it was rather sad that, in a way, only Stephen really seemed to care for it in the way that he did. And that's why it's got to continue. And in continuing, we can remember the one man.
Absolutely.
Which is entirely right. Well, what was?
I mean, it's a real inheritance from Stephen, and we mustn't fumble the ball.
No, I couldn't agree more. And you may have noticed there was an item in the Sussex Express last week, actually, which did mention the little campaign. And I think there was comment from a former mayor, Councillor Barr,
Yes.
and she said it was a brilliant idea. I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. It's an obviously good idea. And she hopes to carry it forward. So we are hopeful, and we'll keep people informed.
That's great.
Absolutely
That's
right.
excellent.
Oh yes, absolutely. Especially at a grim time, we need to be growing things.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I would hope that you will lend your weight to this new university which Mark is starting, because he wants the first spoke to be in Lewis. And I would love that. And it's the sort of thing. For instance, we were just talking about finding a sponsor and building a mock old classroom where you had an inkwell and even a fountain pen.
Good idea.
He said students nowadays don't know what a fountain pen is.
No. And a little the desk used to open, and you used to keep things in there.
That's right.
Absolutely. And also, if you were really naughty, you'd actually carve your name.
That's right.
I did that. And I also went to a school in Croydon during the war, this was, and there was a brick wall there. And the number of people who'd used pennies, the old pennies, to little holes in the brick wall. It's still there. That wall is still there, and so are the pennies. But that's history and what children did in those days.
Right.
In the days when you could buy sticks of licorice, for example. I know that. And you used to play marbles. Entirely right. Now we have world championships marbles, and in fact, there's a marble championship, I think, in Lewis from time to time.
Yes, there is. Yes,
I think up at the local pub as well.
Now, the other thing, which some of the die-hard, you cannot do this, people try to stop, is conkers.
Oh, yeah.
And I said the other day, is I came in on my little scooter, and it was frosty and it was cold, and my nose was cold and so on. But I said, autumn has arrived.
Yes.
At long last, we've got the season back.
Yes.
And conkers were very much part of the autumn.
Completely right. And also very good for preventing spiders. There is a theory that if you have conkers in your room, that the spiders will avoid it. I think that's probably nonsense. I've never really discussed it with a spider, to be honest with you. But I would think they would probably dismiss it.
Yes.
Because they're intelligent creatures.
Yes. I mean, that's why they won't talk to us about it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people wonder why spiders are silent. Just as well they are silent. I mean, if they were going around like that and making noises, it would be quite worrying, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I don't know what sort of a noise. How did we get onto spiders?
I don't know, but a spider must be a journalist because they spin things.
I think so too. And eight legs, of course, which is quite useful, I suppose. Mind you, I have enough trouble with two. And listen,
now away you go. It's your show.
Oh yes. Well, I haven't got a lot to say. You did mention, obviously, Max Miller. We're pleased about that. And I bought the local paper, which is full of pretty bad news, I'm afraid. But let's have a look what I have got in here. Because one thing we do like...
bag.
Yes,
put the bag up in front of the camera so people can see the famous bag.
This is the famous bag.
Right, yes.
There it is. There it is. Oh, look at that. You see, there we are.
That'll give us sausages, yes.
That'll give us a few extra pounds of pork and beef, probably. Wonderful sausages. But no, I've got in here, you mentioned a little bit of history of Max Miller. And we don't want to go on too much about Max Miller, but basically there was an article which I brought with me today, which appeared in our magazine, which is called There'll Never Be Another, because that's what he always said. There'll never be another lady, there'll never be another. Now listen, now there's a funny thing. Here, I went home the other night, Max Miller. Okay, so there'll never be another. And this was when a cartoonist, I always admire cartoonists' work, especially if they're good, and this one was. And he did the whole Max Miller story in cartoon form. So, I mean, we won't go through it today, but I thought we might just mention the fact. A lot of people say, well, when was he born? Well, the answer is he was born on November the 21st, so we're coming up to his birthday, in 1894. His name was Thomas Henry Sargent. We've established that before. And he married a lady who thought that was not a very commercial name. to go on the halls, ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Sargent. No, doesn't sound good. Max Miller, hard to say really, except that he developed this cheeky persona, and she thought, well, cheeky chappy, and that really caught on in a big way, and it became Max Miller. How it was Miller, we don't know, but I respect anybody called Miller. I know a man, a marvelous man, and this goes back to the days when everybody had surnames, not surnames, they had their own names. I mean, I was known as Chunky. I was known as Chunky. That was because you didn't call people fatty, or you preferred not to. But I was quite chunky, so they called me Chunky. You see, and obviously this is Max was known as the Cheeky Chappy. It's the same sort of thing. You see.
Absolutely.
So he was born in Brighton. I think we've established that very clearly. To quite an impoverished family. That's something else that needs to drum home. In fact, there were 5 children in the family, and they're frequently going hungry because times were very tight around that part of the century, 1894 coming up to 1900, and had to move house fairly frequently because they couldn't pay the rent. So we often get people saying, you know, I think Max Miller actually lived in this house. And we've said many times, he probably did. and then for about 4 weeks and then moved on. At one time, they say he actually slept under the West Pier. Who would know? It was at least dry under there, I suppose. So he started doing that. He tried to make some money, as a young lad would do, helping out various things. He used to sell golf balls. I think I've mentioned that before.
You have, yes.
He used to
again, won't hurt.
Yes, he was a caddy, you see. He often offered his services as a caddy, and he kept a pretty sly open for anything that, if the ball went missing and they couldn't find it, he remembered probably where it was. And so at night afterwards, he'd be around there picking up all his gold, and then he'd flog them back, sell them back to people. So a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. And then he entered the war, because it was obviously the First World War at that time, and served in Mesopotamia, funnily enough. A lot of people don't realize that. He served in Mesopotamia, and he did join a sort of concert party. You know how they used to have army concert parties, ensll and all the rest of it. Exactly, Zainal Hotman, yes. And so that really got him on the stage as such. And when he came back to Brighton, it was a pretty obvious move. Brighton, after the war, of course, around 1917, 18, was beginning to revive a little, and they needed entertaining and happiness. So the Palace Pier, for example, the West Pier, for example, and along the seafront, there were 2 little concert parties, and he was part of those, which was lovely. And he would travel between both of them on a bicycle, and later even rang a little song called Let's Have a Ride on Your Bicycle. Right. Let's have a ride on your bicycle. Let's have a ride on your bike. It was a rude song, needless to say, and we won't go down that particular.
Where did he get his trousers from?
Well, that was good. You see, golf. You see, everybody, as you know, golfers, because they don't want to sort of trip over the trouser ends, they would tuck them in, and so they were +4s. And so all these people, and he must have caught on with him. So it is a good question. I mean, why on earth come around looking like we're wearing +4s, except it brought attention to him. And then he wore the most garish stuff, as we all know. I mean, you and I are fairly modest compared. But Max wore the most amazing stuff, and it made an impact. And as I've often said, talking again to the way that Max's tradition carries on, people like Ken Dodd in particular, all ended up with a tickling stick, and they wore the most amazing stuff when they came on stage, and immediately made an impact. It's no good just going on there and saying, hello, everybody, here I am. Not funny at all. Come on, with a bit of a build-up too. There was a signature tune. He had the signature. And the thing about Max too was he was a shrewd character. He didn't immediately rush on. The orchestra in the pit there would say, it's time for Max. They'd start, and nobody knew what was coming. And they were waiting for it. And then he'd wait, and then he'd emerge. And he'd wear all this gear, and immediately they're laughing and cheering. And when it went on from there for years and years and years, as we know. The only thing that he didn't do a lot of was radio. And the reason, again, I think we've mentioned this, was simply because he was unscripted. Max Miller was by and large unscripted. In those days, in the 30s and the 40s, the BBC in particular, it was only the BBC, they insisted that there was a script. So you had to submit, even when he was on workers' playtime, which was during the war, he had to sort of submit the jokes that he was going to tell. And of course, that was always a bit dodgy, although very often he would submit the jokes and they would say, yes, that's all right, Mr. Miller. Yes, that's all right. That's right. And then he'd come on there, and it was the way he told them too, which reminds me of one quick little joke, which was mentioned to me only yesterday by one of my Max Miller colleagues. It was in, I may have mentioned this before, but it was in Lewis Prison. And this bloke had inside knowledge about this. Apparently, sadly, they're all confined to their cells for great lengths of time, which is bad. We would agree with that, it's bad. And so to alleviate the boredom and unable to communicate, they had a little system that when they did meet for about an hour, they had a list. They compiled a list of jokes, you see, about 30 jokes, you see. And they handed everybody in their cells these lists of jokes, you see. And then in the middle of this is not entirely untrue story. In the middle of the night, when they're all sort of tucked away in their cells, one of them would say, he'd look at his list and he'd say, I like that number 17 joke. So he'd go, number 17. And immediately throughout the jail, there would be enormous laughter. People would be rolling around this. So and then a little later on, 12. Oh, that's even funnier, you see. So lots of laughter. Now, a bloke who'd never been in prison before, fortunately, he saw this and he thought, that is amazing, but I just don't understand what it's all about. He said, people shout these numbers out. And the other man said, well, there's a list of these jokes. You can have this list, and you try it tonight. You try it tonight. Thought, whoa, worth a try, isn't it? So, dead of night, they're all in their cells. 14, someone shouts. Roars of laughter. 1. Whoa, not 1. Oh, not that one. We love that one. They laughed and laughed and laughed. Our friend who's newly arrived in the prison thought, I'll try this. I'll try number 9. Oh, right. Number 9. Complete silence. He said, it's funny. Number 9. Not a word. So the next morning, when they were relaxing, etc., he said to the other man, he said, it's a good scheme. He said, but it doesn't work. He said, all this laughter. He said, I shout out a number. He said, and there wasn't one titter, not a titter. Why is that? The bloke said, it's the way you told it. It's the way you told it, you said. Number 9, not funny. 9, very funny. So there we are.
Actually, you have spoken about Max Miller's influence.
Yeah.
And when I was in Northern Ireland, I got to know quite well Frank Carson.
Oh, yeah.
And he stole that catchline.
Yes,
it's the way I tell him.
I met him once. Believe it or not, I met him at the top of the BT Tower. And he was lovely like that. It's impossible to be straight with him.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything was a joke.
Yeah.
And
he couldn't stop talking.
He was a charming man. He's a bit like another character that we met only last year, and that's Jimmy Cricket. Jimmy Cricket, he says, come here. That's, again, this intimate style with you and the audience. Come here, here's another one. And so, as you said to your colleague very recently, it lives on. And so do people like this. Here's another person who used to have catchphrases. You'll like this one. This person I brought along today. Here he is. Look at that. My goodness me. Now then, ladies and gentlemen of Lewis and elsewhere, who do you think this character is? Now, does Keith know? He should do. Is there a clue? He's a bit strangled at the moment. You're right. I thank Al.
Did he have a daughter, Anthea?
Yes. Well,
there we go.
Exactly. This is Arthur Askew. Popular during the war in particular.
Very much so.
With a program called High Gang, I think. No, not High Gang. It was called, dear, what was it called? They used to have a flat at the top of Broadcasting House. That was it. And he was there with a man called Richard Murdoch.
Aha.
So it was Arthur
Dickie
Astley.
Murdoch, yes.
Dickie Murdoch, exactly.
Yes.
And that was a very popular show. It started just before the war, around probably around May or something, 1939, and went through for about 4 years. And there was even a stage show. It wasn't High Gang. High Gang was B.B. Daniels and Ben Lyon.
Yes.
And we'll think about it and come back with that. But that's the great Arthur Astley.
Yes. I can remember my aunt. We watched Arthur Astley on Christmas Day doing a show, and in those days, of course, it was all live.
Yes.
And I can remember my aunt saying, quite seriously, Arthur Astley was asked about how he feels about working on Christmas Day, and he said, it's terribly important that this show, and that he had this Christmas with his family, and that was the whole topic of conversation. What Arthur Astley did on Christmas because he was working.
Absolutely right. I saw, funnily enough, now that is a funny thing. I actually saw Arthur Astley.
Workmate, wasn't it? Playmate.
Hey?
Playmate. That was one of his.
Oh, hello, Playmates. Hello,
Yeah,
Playmates.
that's right.
Big-hearted Arthur, they call me. Da, 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 da. Oh yeah, going back in times. I'm sure this is prompting a few. Bandwagon. It was called Bandwagon, and it was the BBC, and they had the flat at the top, and they had a pet dove and a whole range of things. Now I saw him in pantomime. Where was that? Yes, we were applauding. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? I saw him in pantomime at the Palladium, except. This is a story of my life sometimes. I went once to see Peter Sellers in a show in London. Guess what? He'd fallen off the stage the night before, didn't appear. So this was Arthur Astley as the Dame in pantomime at the Palladium. Guess what? He didn't turn up. And the trouble was, whoever did take over, it's impossible to take over a character like Arthur Astley, you see. And that's, I don't know why that happens. It's so annoying when it happens. You specifically want to see someone, and for some reason or other, they can't make it. So there he is. I thought you'd like to see him. Lovely character, Arthur Astley.
Absolutely.
We remember him well. And
he was pint-sized, wasn't he?
Oh, yes, he was a very short man.
I remember.
Go on.
He starred in the movie Murder on the Something Express or The Ghost Train. The Ghost Train. He starred in the movie The Ghost Train. Wow. And he played the detective in disguise. Aha!
Amazing how these things. Amazing how one thing triggers another one.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll put you away now, Arthur. All right. Yes. They're very nice. You see. And it's probably worth a few pennies, that little character, especially with his hat. That's very nice.
Yes.
And there's while we're on the subject,
where do you find these things? In the lanes in Brighton?
Oh no, mostly in this lovely town of Lewes. Actually, I was watching one of these antique road trips last night, and they were up in Scotland, and then they ended up at auction in Bolton somewhere. It wasn't a bad program, but the trouble is, what I don't like about those programs, people go into these shops and try and knock down the price. So take advantage of the shop seller who's on television. So he can't really say, no, I'm not doing that. So they end up with these alleged bargains. Then they take them to some obscure auction house, this time in Bolton. And there, of course, there's a lack of interest in many of the items. And sometimes they lose quite a lot of money. It seems a strange exercise. And then finally, we've got this, which is... Peter Brough and Archie. This is Archie Andrews.
Educating Archie.
Yes, lovely. Yes, he does talk as well some of the time, don't you? Can you say anything, please? I'm not going to do the voice, but is he? Oh, no, he's not. He's. I think he's a bit jammed up. We have trouble on this television station. Whenever I bring things, they don't work. They should work, you see, but there we are. Yes, that's Peter Brough. Because the amazing thing about him, as everybody says, was that he was a ventriloquist on the radio.
Yes.
Which, of course, is a very good place to be a ventriloquist.
Absolutely.
Because you can't see a... He didn't talk like that. No, he didn't. He had a voice like, Peter Brough, he used to say. He had his own television and radio series as well. And if I remember rightly, a whole series of comedians, including Max Bygraves, all actually appeared in the same program with him. And there's another man, by the way. Why was Max Bygraves called Max? Max Miller.
Oh, really?
Max Miller. It was exactly.
He named himself after. Or
Isn't it amazing, these things you see? People, I mean, if you hadn't watched Mirador, you'd have never known that.
No.
Think the education.
You learn more on Mirador that you can't find anywhere else.
The educational value of this is absolutely beyond measure. I think we should be in touch with the government about this and suggest that this should be available in all schools. I think Keith and I should be available on a screen, I hasten to add. I'm not going around. I'm not going around schools. I did that once upon a time. It was a disaster. It was a disaster because children, then they've got their own interests, haven't they? And they certainly don't want to hear an old git going on about. Oh, I remember them days. Oh, them days. By the way, do you like tomato juice?
I do.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've got to rush away, everybody. I know you'll be disappointed to hear this. I brought these chaps along. I've got to rush away because you will not believe this. But at home, I am awaiting arrival. I am, seriously. And they said that it would be here in 48 hours. It hasn't arrived yet. I am awaiting arrival of 24 cans of something called Big Tom. And this is a really remarkable, now there's a good plug, sausages, Big Tom tomato juice. And apparently this can be mixed with something like vodka, obviously.
Oh, a Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary, if you excuse the language. So I've got to rush away because...
do you know what a Bloody Caesar is?
No, what is a Bloody Caesar?
A Bloody Caesar is made with tomato juice.
Oh.
And my wife, being Canadian, she loved it. Tomato juice is a mixture of tomato and clam juice. And a Bloody Caesar is. But then the other one, of course, is a Bloody Virgin, and that is pure tomato juice.
Pure tomato juice, unadulterated.
Absolutely.
Well, there we are. No, these tomatoes. Why? The only puzzling thing is, why order them? Because I'm not sure you can say this, but I mean, waiting on these things to arrive, and you think, are they going to arrive? Will they ever arrive? And then there's a phone number that nobody ever answers, It's a dodgy business. All this mail order stuff is all very well. But
yes, luckily, the stuff that I have can be left in the mailbox. And I took delivery last week of a tractor.
A tractor?
A tractor.
Oh.
But it's only about that big.
Oh.
It's to fit on my little N-gauge railway.
Oh.
So there it is. And there's a corrugated cardboard ploughed field.
One
sitting proudly in the middle.
Oh my goodness, a man after my own heart. I've got a little townscape which I can't bring with me, but I add things to that.
Oh yes.
I had a cottage, a lovely cottage, with a woman, a dairymaid, coming out of the door. And I then found a lovely shepherd. A shepherd, one of these dogs, a shepherd.
Yes.
Yeah, a lovely dog sitting there, which is really nice. I tell you what I have got. You mentioned a tractor. I used to sell in Cornwall, and they were very popular in Cornwall because there's a lot of tractors in Cornwall. Here is the news. There are a lot of tractors in Cornwall. Not many people know that. And in fact, we used to sell these tin plate tractors. And I'm going to bring one next week.
Oh, please. Yes.
It won't be fitting in with your little
No, but I just like to see it.
And not only that, this is quite remarkable. I think it was probably made, I suspect, in Europe. I'm not sure. But it has gears and changing the gears.
Ooh.
You can go down from 1 through to 5.
Oh, yes. No, I really want to see
And it's got a steering wheel as well.
Yes.
Oh, well.
Yes.
So I'll bring 1 or 2 little metal toys.
Yes.
You see, viewers, it's a good thing to collect. Be clear about that. But the thing to do, as you obviously have, is to have them nicely available. You should never stash things away.
No. They've got to be there. And actually, when you say you put a little thing, is one of my favorites is a weeping willow tree.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, and I create a little stream so that it's in a suitable location.
There was an item on television a few days ago, I think, talking about the famous people who have model railways.
Yeah.
And I think Rod Stewart is one of those people. And a man called George Holland. He's got a model railway as well.
And Huey Green had one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I wonder what it is about men. I mean, women don't collect model railways. Now, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Well, I mean, little boys, presumably, in the war particularly, I was given a Hornby set, a very modest Hornby set. And little boys they never get Hornby sets to girls, did they?
No, they didn't.
They gave them dolls and things.
Yeah,
you see,
that's right.
That's how the world has changed. But today, I'm sure the advocates out there would say, girls should have. Oh, they should have the whole world. So a tractor next.
Next time.
Next Wednesday. Something worth looking forward to.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And I must go home for my look.
To take.
Could everybody keep their fingers crossed, please? And if my tomato juices do arrive, I'll bring a couple of them here.
Oh, yes.
Do you think the management will object?
Well, no. In fact, what I would suggest is that since you appear, as we come up to the yard arm, in fact, the sun is just going over the yard arm now by a couple of minutes.
So it has.
Well, about 15 minutes.
Right.
What we could do is we could get from the management a little smidgen of vodka.
Do you think so?
And we could have a Bloody Mary.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. What do you mean, live?
Absolutely. I mean, we could replicate Dave Allen.
Suddenly, yes. Suddenly, a gloomy world is beginning to brighten up, which is what Mirador is all about. What I hope I'm all about on a Wednesday. What Max Miller was about all his blooming life. And what you should be, if you go out there, I tell you what, here's a final thing for you. Here's a final thing. If you don't like tomato juices, don't worry about it. A lot of people don't. Now, this is the other thing to remember, a smile. I'll tell you what, a decent smile. And I'll tell you something even more encouraging as I remembered it. There was a nice lady I was having trouble checking out. Don't even go there, Oh, no, it won't click. Where do I put all this? So a very nice young lady came over called Alice. Her name was, and she was down there. And she said, oh, no, that's all right. She said, oh, I can sort that. She said, don't panic. And I said, don't panic, Captain Mannery. No, I said, don't panic. And she said, and she must have been only about 20, Captain Mannery. In other words, she watched Dad's Army. And I was pleased because there is an argument that young people don't watch things like It Ain't Half Hot. So this was Alice.
That's brilliant.
Credit to Alice.
It's a brilliant series, and it's brilliant that young people watch it.
Absolutely right. And the other one, who I don't think I would make too much of this today, but you're doomed. You're all doomed.
Who's that?
That was the Scottish guy. Brilliant actor. Here we go. All right. Answers on a postcard, please, to this address. Yes. Keith Hayes, Mirador Television, Lewis,
White Hart.
Exactly. Yes. So that's it, everybody.
Absolutely. And if you think we're daft, we are.
Oh,
and join us.
Bonkers.
Being daft is loads of fun.
Yes, I mean, if you're sitting there, wherever you are, whoever you are, anywhere in the world, and say, well, what on earth are they all about? You don't ask that question, do you? I mean, if you keep asking that question, you'll get absolutely nowhere at all. The fact is, we're here because we're here because we're here. And I'm going out there and I'm going to smile at the first person I see. And if I get arrested, I'll let you know.
Very well. We shall visit you in jail.
Oh, that's lovely. And then I can tell
bring
that
Arthur
joke.
Askew down and we'll...
And then I can tell that joke. Number 9. That joke, you see. That was a good joke, wasn't it? Lovely. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Look after yourself.
Okay. Bye, John.
Goodbye. Toodle pip, everybody. Oh, yeah. Bye.
There we are. Is John Henty and the foolishness of Mirador. I hope we've had an interesting morning for you, and we'll be back. Well, tomorrow you can catch it all again if you missed it today. A recording tomorrow of today's programs, and on Friday. We'll be back live again, so we'll see you Friday morning at 8 o'clock. Until then, I think what we'll do is we will say toodle, 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 pip, and why not? it's good to say goodbye as well as to say hello, isn't it? Yes. Toodle-pip. Oh, there we are. That was yesterday's performance. I hope that you enjoyed it. Able to dip in and out. But as my two colleagues said, what nonsense. What absolute nonsense. And it's good stuff. All right. We'll be back live tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Toodle-pip.